And from there, I want to go into the difficulties, right, of what it was like back then. Because at some point or another, you were able to run League of Legends tournaments, and then you were able to
Yep.
run StarCraft and this, that, and the other. And then at one point, for some reason, whatever reason, and this sucks for everybody, and I mean everybody. This sucks for everybody in esports. The worst thing that ever happened to esports was when every developer got, I don't know if jealous is the word, but got self-conscious enough to where they said, I can't have my game being featured next to another game, right? So
Right.
this sort of community that I fell in love with immediately as soon as I stepped into that place and I saw my future, what it was going to be like,
Yep.
it got taken away. League of Legends said, we're going to run our own tournaments, right?
Hmm.
And then they go off and do their own tournaments. So now no more League of Legends alongside StarCraft, alongside Halo, alongside Super Smash Brothers. And at the time, it was, and I know you remember this, obviously you were there, but for those who were not lucky enough and who weren't blessed enough to experience this day, you would walk in and at some point or another, you would hear League of Legends just go off. And I'm talking about, you picture a warehouse, right? A massive warehouse with a massive TV theater screen, and then a row of bleachers or seats. And then
Hmm.
on the next column, you will see the same thing, but for StarCraft, and then blah blah blah. But at some point, you would get battles between the fans where
Yeah.
they would scream, and then I think it was Tasteless and Artosis, who would be like,
Yeah.
"You guys are gonna get League of Legends. You let League of Legends fans be louder than you." I know we're not. And then StarCraft would be like, "Pah!" An explosion, and then you would hear Puckett, "Are you guys gonna let them?" And then Halo would be like, "Pah!" And then Call of
Yeah.
Duty would be like, "Crickets." You hear one clap. It wasn't that bad. It was like 15 people, but nonetheless, like I miss that part, man. Was that, did that affect one, the business that you guys were running? And obviously it hurt from we were building something cool, and now they're taking it away because they don't want to be featured on another thing.
Yeah. There's good and bad parts about that. So the good parts were that it was obviously gaining momentum, right? It was a real thing. Um, the bad part was obviously it cramped our business model, and we were on a trajectory to grow something big. And then you're right, like the publishers did not want to see their games, look not as big. So especially for a game like Call of Duty, which at the time was huge, didn't want to look small in a room next to a startup game like League of Legends or something like that. So
Is that
um,
is that what it was?
yeah,
How old was League of Legends at that point when you guys were running those events?
it was pretty new.
Jesus,
Uh,
imagine that.
so yeah, so that's part of it. The other thing was, look, again, all the way back to the beginning. This is a world where, and this fact informs everything that happens in esports forever. You don't own the game; somebody owns the game. It's not public domain; it's somebody's IP, and that was always a facet of our business. What we were trying to do was just get the spectacle of it so big and be so good at operating the league and creating the content that the publishers would see the value and just want to be a participant. And so what started to happen was people with new games wanted to be there, but people with the established games didn't want their competitors
Unfortunately,
riding their coattails,
yeah.
right? And so it made sense, and I got it. And in a lot of ways, still esports is kind of the tail wagging the dog of $170 billion industry. You can't really risk the core business to develop something new that way. The other thing is, and I learned this more and more over time, but I learned it right away too. Like I said to you early on, the video game industry executive had no idea what we were trying to do. Everybody in sports knew exactly what we were trying to do. It didn't matter if you were at a league or ESPN or anywhere, you got it right away. You might not see it as a TV product, but you got it. You understood what it was. Um, the once the sort of video game guys kind of got it, they really just thought of it as marketing. They didn't think of it as a media product because generally speaking, people that work at video game publishers and studios don't really understand the media world and they don't understand the sports world, except as fans or
Yeah,
athletes or whatever.
yeah.
But and that's a really critical thing. And I grew up in New York. Like you understand, media is Wall Street is an enormous part of New York City. Media is really bigger, right? So you think of the global advertising industry, the global television, music, movie business. the corporate headquarters of all of those things, including the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, they're all here. And so that's why you see every tech company that starts in California, including those like Twitch and YouTube, eventually build huge offices here that are just all the salespeople who need to sell advertising, because the money's here. You get that if you grow up in this space. And I was always a media fan. I grew up a TV kid in the 80s. I loved it. I loved sports. I played sports my whole life. So it was sort of innate to the way I think, but it wasn't for them. And I didn't understand, as we were creating the business, exactly how the video game studios and publishing worked. And we learned more and more over time about each other, I think. But that was sort of the key thing. So the good part of that was it meant that the publishers were seeing the value in all this activity. They may not think of it the same way that we did at the time, but they were at least seeing the value of it. And that started a process of esports becoming more and more important to the overall industry.
Yeah.
So that part was good. The bad part was the other side. But I also think that that was the start of this going from a sort of, community driven thing to a professional sport. So it wasn't bad in all senses.
So obviously, and this term was used in a recent podcast, as recent as yesterday. Flying the plane as you're building it, right, is a very, very loosely but heavily used term in esports, because that is what we're doing, right? Like as much as we understand the blueprint that sports has left there for us to utilize, as much as media and sports media has left this blueprint for us to follow, we sort of have to reinvent that so we don't suffer the same sort of negatives that they do, as they are already well established and been around for hundreds of years, right? Sports wise. And when you're going through this thing, you have to sort of also have this entrepreneur mentality where you have the freedom to say, well, I don't have to do that. I can do this my own way. Where it would have been super easy for you guys to sort of continue. Where am I getting? I was going to say to continue pushing everything on YouTube, for example, or Justin TV back then. You guys decided to launch your own, MLG TV. But before that, at some point, you guys said, we can turn this into a UFC sort of thing where there's pay-per-view and people will get a higher quality sort of service by paying an extra $20 or whatever. Standard definition, you're still good, but if you really want this extra thing, like, you do that. What I loved about you and Sonny and everything that you guys were doing with the behind the scenes partners that I don't even know about, I appreciated the fact that you guys were always trying something new to better the thing. And because of that, when we first started talking, I always came to you guys with like these wild ass ideas. One of the ideas was like, why are we paying? What was it? What was that? The screen, the Spreadshirt. You remember Spreadshirt.com? Spreadshirt.com is massive. It's this online store where you can create your own T-shirts and this. And I remember pitching to Sonny. I'm like, yo, we gotta stop giving people money that should stay in esports to grow the scene. We have to have a store.mlg / whatever team we were in back then or whatever, and we got to sell the T-shirts. We got to keep money that's being made in esports and this, that, and the other. So I was always with you guys in that regard, where why hire external companies when we can keep everything in house and build it the way that we want to build it the way that we understand how everything else was built, but we need to apply it. We need to apply formats that we have to come up with, right? And you see it nowadays. I think traditional sports are learning more from esports than esports is learning from them. All due respect, obviously, like, we are following some processes that they've left, but we are adjusting faster than they are because we're more nimble. We don't have the political sort of struggles that they have because of how many billionaires that are out there that are always right because they're billionaires. Of course we're right. We know how to fucking make money. We know what's up.